Imagine this. A courtroom in Akron, Ohio, quiet and tense. A woman holds her face in her hands, barely visible behind trembling fingers. This is a woman called Tiffanny Powell, sitting, not standing, during her sentencing. She just heard the verdict that would forever define her. Just 5 years earlier, on an April evening in 2014, Tiffanny stood in her Akron home with a plan. A plan that would cost lives and shatter families. A man called James Harris, 69, had been coaxed into coming over under the guise of buying a car and a washer. He was the father of 5 of Tiffanny's 8 children, and their relationship had ended in a custody battle full of tears and tension. Tiffanny had asked a friend from a domestic violence shelter to call James, tell him there was a deal, and lure him to the house. She believed in her heart it was a desperate measure. She said she wanted to reclaim her children, but she didn't see how the road from there could end in blood. When James arrived, the plan turned deadly. Her boyfriend, a man called Paul Reed, met James in the basement. What unfolded was ugly. Reed slammed James's head onto the hard concrete floor 15 times. The beats echoed through the quiet house until James lay motionless, life gone in an instant. And Tiffanny, she watched it happen. She lied to detectives. She painted herself as a scared woman who had only wanted protection. But the jurors saw through the act. Reed was convicted first. Then, in 2016, Tiffanny was found guilty of aggravated murder and obstructing justice. When she stood in court, she whispered through tears, "I didn't want this to happen. I never want my children to look at their mom and say, 'You killed Dad.'" The judge sentenced her to 3 decades to life in prison, calling her presence in the scheme undeniable, her remorse painfully absent. James's daughters, lost in grief, stood in court. One daughter, choked by tears, called Tiffanny a liar and manipulator. "The only victim here," she said quietly, "is my father." The aftermath survived news clips, but the ripple never stopped. This was no random tragedy. It was a collision of hearts, desperation, and a decision that spun out of control so fast it became horror. It's a warning that even the closest bonds, familial love, parental instinct, can turn lethal when desperation meets deceit. On a chilling April evening in 1998, a man named Charles Victor Thompson stormed into his ex-girlfriend's apartment in Houston. It wasn't a surprise visit. It was an act born of revenge. The night prior, police had been called to the same address and escorted him out. But that didn't stop him. The next morning, he kicked down the door. Inside, 2 lives lay in waiting. A man, the woman's new partner, stood defenseless and was shot dead. The woman herself, his ex, Dennis Hayslip, was gravely wounded. Rushed to the hospital by air, she clung to life, only to succumb to her injuries a week later. He was arrested, tried, and in 1999, sentenced to death. A jury called the crime horrible and heartbreaking, convinced Thompson posed a continuing threat to society. But the story took an extraordinary turn. In 2005, during a routine post-sentencing hearing, Thompson, the condemned man, did something no one could have imagined. Using a smuggled civilian outfit and a forged ID badge claiming he was from the Attorney General's office, he walked right out of the Harris County Jail. No dramatic escape protocol, just bold confidence, casual charm, and a flawless bluff. He passed at least 4 jail staff before stepping into freedom. By 2005, the manhunt was swift and relentless. Authorities feared the worst. Victims' families were on edge. Some even went into hiding. He was recaptured 3 days later, not in some remote hideout, but outside a liquor store in Shreveport, Louisiana. Drunk, leaning on a payphone, casually chatting as though in no hurry. He even laughed at his own capture. When asked who he was, he replied, "You know who I am." And then again, My name is Charles Thompson. Thompson was returned to Texas, where the authorities, and the families he terrorized, breathed a heavy sigh of relief. He remains on death row today, locked within the confines of the Polunsky unit in Livingston, Texas. This isn't just a story of a double murder. It's a story of defiance, manipulation, and institutional failure. A man who killed in the name of rage, then walked free again with nothing but a fake badge and unchecked overconfidence. And when his plan unraveled, he was found not hiding, but stumbling through life as though everything was a joke. It was a chilly evening in Southall, West London, ordinary for many, but for one woman, everything was about to unravel. A woman called Lakhvir Singh had spent 16 years entangled in a secret love affair with a man named Lakhvinder Lucky Chima. Their connection had become an unbreakable thread, until the moment he chose to untangle it. Lucky had decided to marry someone else, a young woman he'd fallen for, named Gurjeet Chung, and they were planning a Valentine's Day wedding. For Lakhvir, it was a moment that shattered her world. A rush of betrayal and jealousy overwhelmed her, but she didn't scream. She plotted. A month before, Lucky was hospitalized with mysterious symptoms after eating a meal Lakhvir had prepared. Doctors suspected poisoning, but couldn't say for sure. It should have been a warning. It was poison. A few weeks later, Lakhvir boarded a plane to India with only one thing in mind: a deadly ingredient, aconite, known as the Queen of Poisons. Back in London on January 27, 2009, Lakhvir quietly placed a container of leftover curry in Lucky's fridge. She knew he and Gurjeet planned to share dinner that night. It was a meal that would bind their fates together forever. They ate. Almost immediately, reality turned surreal. Lucky began vomiting violently. His face went numb. Then, vision vanished. Panic took hold. In a 999 call, he whispered through screams, "My ex-girlfriend has poisoned me." Gurjeet collapsed beside him, her eyes half-needed, consciousness drifting. They raced to the hospital. Gurjeet survived, but Lucky died within the hour. The police were baffled by the rare, ancient poison. As investigators closed in, they discovered traces of aconite in Lakhvir's coat pocket and handbag. Her attempt to pass it off as a skin rash gone nowhere. A lodger remembered seeing her handle the curry. The net was tightening. In court, the atmosphere was tense. Cameras clicked, whispers echoed. Lakhvir blamed her brother-in-law initially, but her defense crumbled on cross-examination. She had planned it. She sourced the poison, she laced the curry, and she watched, cold and calculating. The jury found her guilty of murder and causing grievous bodily harm to Gurjeet. Sentenced at the Old Bailey, she received life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years. The judge's words were chilling. "You said about a cold and calculating revenge." Gurjeet, in court, barely held herself up. "I still do not feel fully recovered. It will affect me for the rest of my life." Lucky's sister added softly, "Now I feel as if there is only emptiness in my life." This crime was more than betrayal. It was a calculated ritual of heartbreak, delivered through a familiar dish and a deadly ingredient. The curry, meant to nourish, became the final message. Love can poison. Heartbreak can kill.